Welcome to Sarpy Outlook. I'm Peg O'Dea Lippert. Our guest today is Jack Bangert. Jack is the dual language coordinator and education academy coordinator at Omaha's South High School. Jack is a past associate chair of the Sarpy County Democrats. Welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Peg. I'm here today as Jack Bangert, private citizen. I work for OPS, but everything I say today is simply through my eyes and working with the community of South Omaha.
Thank you so much again, Jack. We are so proud and so happy to have you as our guest.
Oh, thank you.
I love the article in the Omaha World Herald where Coach Moss attributed the academic success of that remarkable soccer team to that messy-haired Jack Bangert. We could talk about that all day.
Yeah, I got a haircut because it's hot out, but truthfully, there's a whole team of us at South that work to help those kids, and I'm just I'm very happy to be able to be a part of that great team.
Great. Today, we could talk about that soccer team and all of those acclaims that you received in that regard all day, but today I'd like you to discuss with us the programs that you're involved with at South and specifically about your recent trip to Mexico. But let's start with the programs and the work you're doing with our Dreamers.
Sure. My job at South High School is I'm the dual language coordinator at Omaha South, and the dual language program is been around for a while, over 10 years. And what happens is kids who are immigrant kids who speak Spanish as a first language come into kindergarten and are mixed with native English speakers, with the idea being that by the time they graduate from high school, they're bilingual and fluent in both languages, and going on to college and using those bilingual skills. And we know from research, and I don't want to get too research-based because that would take forever, but we do know that this form of teaching English is superior to traditional ESL, and that's why we have this program at within the Omaha Public Schools. There are 6 elementary schools, 3 middle schools that all feed Omaha South where I work. And my job there is to make sure those kids have access to college. I work with families to teach them how the educational process works, show them where the resources are to have access to post-secondary education. And then also, my other role at South as education coordinator involves training future teachers. Our biggest challenge right now at Omaha South is serving all the students who want to be a part of our program. And not just Hispanic kids, we have kids from all over the city who want to be a part of the dual language program so they can learn Spanish and use those skills to get jobs. But we don't have enough bilingual teachers. Well, we're sitting on a gold mine at South. We have all these bilingually trained students, so we try to identify students who might be interested in education. And then I'm an adjunct for Metro Community College, and I teach the Intro to Education course at South High School, where kids get college credit toward their education degree in order to start that career path to see if it's something they might want to follow up on. And then hopefully our first group are going to be juniors in college this year. They'll come back and work for us so we can expand our program.
Oh, my. When you talk about the particular approach or this program, what is the program, Jack, about a language that's different than the traditional English as a second language?
Sure. It's a 50-50 model, which means, let's say, a child comes in kindergarten. Half the day is taught in English, half the day is taught in Spanish. So for the morning, they'll do their subject areas in English, and then the second half of the day, they'll be in Spanish. And that will be the model they'll use until middle school. Once they're in middle school, depending on the middle school, each school does the exact classes a little bit different, but they will take a class in Spanish and then other classes in English. Now at the high school level, which I'm most familiar with, when they come out of 8th grade, most of the kids, if not all of the kids, pretty much all of the kids, can speak English and Spanish equally as well, with no accent. And so what we do then is we provide math, science, social studies, the core courses, in 90% Spanish. Now, one of the things that viewers might wonder about is, well, if a kid's studying history and math and Spanish, will they struggle in college? And the answer is no. And the reason is anyone who speaks more than one language knows I can explain to one of my students in Spanish the theory of relativity in Spanish. But if they understand Spanish, they can easily translate that knowledge into English in their mind. All they need to know is the new vocabulary. What happens is they get plenty of English from their other classes. So even though they're taking maybe 3 or 4 classes in Spanish, the rest of their day's in English. So what happens is these kids create these connections within their brain, which research is showing, which helps them to do better in school. And we're finding that our test scores are higher than the average student in the Omaha Public Schools. Our college success rate is much higher than even the state average. And these are kids who are mostly from poor homes, poor economically, that are English as second language homes and first-generation college students.
Really? Now, do the English-speaking children start in first grade?
Yes, they
also,
do.
So they come through speaking Spanish also.
So imagine
Wow.
a little Caucasian kid who speaks Spanish flawlessly with no accent. My Spanish, I have a serious American accent, and I'll always have it. These kids who start in kindergarten, they come out and they speak Spanish just like somebody that just came from El Salvador.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking youngsters are tutored, if you will, all the way through.
Exactly.
That is
And they
remarkable.
nurture both those languages. They've done it in Canada for a long time with French and English in Quebec. It's just now we know how powerful this is for brain development. We also know economically the job opportunities that bilingual students have. And also, we know now that it's superior to English as a second language traditional teaching methods. The issue is, some viewers might say, well, why do you even do ESL? Well, Spanish works in Omaha because we have a population of Spanish speakers to support the program. We don't have enough Nepali speakers or Korean speakers to be able to support a truly bilingual program, but we do have enough Spanish speakers. So if we lived in San Francisco, where there's a large Mandarin Chinese-speaking population, and they do have this, they have a dual-language Chinese-English school in San Francisco. So.
Remarkable. Well, thank you for that information.
Sure.
Now, if you would detail for us how you happened to go on this recent trip to Mexico, and what was that all about?
Okay, well, as part of our job, we obviously work with students who are migrant students. And to be a migrant student, technically you have to work in agriculture, and you have to be moving around. There's a certain amount of time that you stay in one place and move to another place. Agriculture work can be farms, working in the fields, or it can be a meatpacking plant. And so we get migrant students who come to Omaha. Not all are Spanish speaking, but many are. And not all are from Mexico. Some can be from Nicaragua or El Salvador. So what we have is an exchange with the government of Mexico, their Department of Education. They have a migrant program in Mexico, and we have one in the United States. And so they come and see how we educate migrant students who come here, and vice versa. So this year, they invited myself and 3 colleagues to Cuernavaca, Mexico, in the state of Morelos, and we visited schools with the idea of, there was a couple, the main reason was to help the Mexican government support English-speaking students within their schools, like their version of ESL. But also, for my role at Omaha South, I need to really understand how Mexican schools work, so when a kid comes to us from Mexico, what kind of education have they had? And I can give you an example. We had a student a few years back who came to us and spoke no English. And he was put in traditional ESL, which meant a very basic math class. But this kid had went to school in Mexico up through their equivalent of high school. And it turns out he was able to do pre-calculus. And so he was a very high math and science student. But nobody knew it because he didn't speak any English. Well, we did at South because we have this program. So we brought him into the dual language program. He took his math, his science, and his STEM courses in Spanish, which meant he continued on through AP Calculus. We actually offer AP Calculus in Spanish at South. We might be the only school in the nation that does that. And we offer other AP courses in Spanish as well. While he learned English. Now he's at UNO studying aviation. Now let's look at the other side of it. Had he done ESL, He may have dropped out because he would have been bored, because he already did that in Mexico. He may have saw no reason to continue in school, and who knows how his English language acquisition would have been. So what does that have to do with Mexico? Well, we go to Mexico, and we hear a lot about immigration in this country in terms of Spanish speakers who come to us with no English. But what about all these kids whose parents take them back to Mexico and only speak English and no Spanish? And so what was shocking to me, the thing I was not ready for visiting these schools, was going into the schools and seeing a kid who would come up to me and speak perfect English, my Spanish was better than some of their Spanish, and looking at how lost and scared they were and how they didn't fit. What was really sad was when you had a student who grew up here from the time they were a baby, but either a parent was deported and they were sent back with the parent, or the parents just decided to go back for whatever reasons, economics or whatever, and they just did not fit. They really are kids without a country. And that's tough because we don't think about that very often.
We don't.
The part that was most maybe eye-opening to me is we tend to be hard on ourselves as Americans in terms of, you know, we don't treat immigrants well. I mean, that's one thing. Obviously,
some
I'm
of us
very
care,
yeah. You know, we tend to be sensitive about those things. Are we treating people well? But one thing I found is humans are humans. And in Mexico, when these kids would speak English, they're made fun of. They're bullied for coming from the United States. So a lot of the things that maybe we hear about here happen to these kids when they go back.
Side.
The flip side. I mean, like I said, humans are humans.
Yes.
And so it was eye-opening to me, and I guess, you know, in terms of this message that I would give to the people who are watching this, that it does happen. And I think as Americans, we have a certain responsibility to take care of these kids and make sure that they at least have a chance, because they really are Americans.
These would be kids who are maybe born here. They are U.S. citizens.
Some are citizens. Some even have a social number but are living in Mexico now because of family situations, because what happens sometimes, less now under the Obama administration with deferred action, which is a whole nother subject, but with deferred action before that, families would get separated. So mom gets sent home, maybe dad's here legally, kids are legal, mom gets sent home, so they take the whole family back. So we see a wide array of immigration issues at the school I work at, and there's a lot of work to be done, but I think my main focus with this interview and all the things we do is to really inform the public about the truths around immigration and not around all of the ideology and cable news network chatter, because most of it's wrong, and most of it is not. I don't know, I consider myself a Nebraskan, and it's just not Nebraska values the way some of these things work out. So if anything, I hope we can offer is just the other side of it and the reality that many of these kids, because these are kids. I mean, we're not talking about adults. They're children. And the things they face, it's difficult. And I think we can do a lot to help them.
So what can we do from this side, you know, from your experience at school with some of these youngsters who eventually will end up back in Mexico? Now, in your program, it sounds like they can speak both.
Yes. It's difficult because once they're in Mexico, there's not much we can do. It comes down to the Mexican government. And the Mexican government, truthfully, their resources are stretched. If a kid has a social number, we can always say, you know what, keep studying, practice your English, come back to the United States because you qualify for Pell Grants. You can study in the United States when you get older, when you don't need to live with your parents anymore. The kids who really are in a difficult position, and it's tough for me because I like to solve problems and I don't know what the answer is to this one, are the kids who maybe were brought here at 6 months or a year and a half or 2 years old, lived here for 10 years and are taken back. There's just
True limbo for them.
Yeah, I mean, they are truly in limbo. They are Americans in every sense of the word except without documentation. And so that's tough. And I don't know. Hopefully in the new immigration bill, if it would make it through, there would be some hope for them to apply for residency in the United States. But my message is always consistent. I know the message of all Omaha Public Schools officials is consistent. Continue your education. It's the only thing no one can take away from you. It's going to empower you someday to do things that you will not have the power to do otherwise. And so that message is always consistent. But that's a tough situation.
That was quite an experience for
Yeah, yeah, it was very eye-opening. And, you know, that was the most difficult situation. But in other ways, you know, Mexico is ahead of us. They offer early childhood education to their kids. And what we found, I was with a teacher in a classroom, and she said, my gosh, these Mexican kids' amount of literacy in Spanish, if we were to convert this into English, is higher than the American kids in the 1st and 2nd grade.
Really?
And the reason is they have access, especially if they live in a larger urban area, to daycare at 3 months. The government provides it. School starts at, I believe, 3 years old, but much younger than we do here. And all research shows the most important time for brain development and education is from childbirth to age 6. When do we start school in the United States? 6. So they're actually ahead of us in that sense. So the question is, why do they get behind? Well, they get behind because then the classes, we observed classes of 60 kids and one teacher in a room that was so loud nothing could get done. So that's how they get behind. But early on, we can actually learn some things from them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so interesting on both ends of it.
Well, as we wrap this up, Jack, you've already talked some about immigration and the facts about immigration. We could spend another whole day talking about that, I think. And you've touched on the effects on our youngsters. What are the possibilities for us in this multicultural country in which we live?
Yeah, I think my grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and she was 92. And when I was working in South Omaha, one of the things she told me was, you know, my family is originally German, and we're of German descent. And she said her parents spoke German until the war. And then society told them to stop. And they lost it. And she said, you have an opportunity as a teacher to do something for this group of immigrants that's never been done, and that's to keep them from losing a piece of themselves.
Oh, wonderful.
Because that's truly what makes our country great. I mean, Vicki, my wife, and I have traveled all over the world, and the older we get and the more we travel, the more we realize how fortunate we are to live in the United States. And what makes us so great is really our diverse background. We get the best of everywhere. And we need to maintain it. I tell the immigrant kids I work with, the kids in dual language, the trick is, how do you keep your culture but adapt to society? Because by keeping your culture and adapting and becoming American, we become great. And I think the main thing that we can do is provide educational opportunities to these kids. Research shows that first-generation immigrant kids are the most likely to go to college for the first time and finish. South High School is full of these students. And we are so fortunate to live in the state of Nebraska because Nebraska is an education-friendly state. Despite what people may say, Nebraska has College Bound Nebraska. If you qualify for a Pell Grant, you can get free tuition and books at any state school. I mean, so money really is less of an issue for a Nebraska kid without means.
That's remarkable, Jack. A little-known fact, I would say.
Yeah, and we have great philanthropical organizations. Susie Buffett, I've never met her, but her organization is doing more to change lives in Nebraska than I would say any NGO, any government institution, because this year alone at South High School, I believe her organization is responsible for providing college access to 71 winners of the Buffett at South High. Oh, 71. My. That's free college to 71 mostly first-generation students who are getting a chance to go to school because of one person who sees value in education. Oh, and it changes the entire destiny of a family when you get that education. Nice. And so as a community, regardless of your views on immigration, whatever, we need to embrace education because it's going to make my children's world better. Because if their neighbors are educated and have the opportunity to do things they love, and I'm not talking about being rich, I'm talking about being happy. And being happy is doing something you love every day. And that's what education provides. And so that's what we can do as a community to help these kids.
Well, Jack, I just can't thank you enough for being with us today. And I want to thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of all of us.
Well,
really.
Thank you for the opportunity to come talk about my students.
and give our regards to Vicki, your wife, who also is working on behalf of our immigrants.
All right, I will
Thanks
do that.
Again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.